picture you see there with my parents. I won't say what year, but you can probably guess from my father's afro what year, the decade that was. But that is one of very few pictures that my parents have of me as a child or as a baby, because I was born with a heart defect, a VSD for your cardiologist in here if you want to know specifically. And I was very, very sick as a child for the first 11 and a half years of my life. I was in and out of hospitals, specifically with double pneumonia, at least 2 to 3 times a year. And the doctors couldn't figure out why I would always get pneumonia. And they kept saying, it's not related to her heart. It's not related to her heart. We don't know why this keeps happening. But every year it got worse and worse and worse. Until my 6th grade year, I spent several months out of school. So my mom called a cardiologist that was located in Birmingham, Alabama, which is about an hour and a half from my hometown, and said, I've got to get my daughter up here. I just feel like it's her heart. And they said, no, it's no way. Pneumonia, there's no correlation. It's not her heart. She goes, please let her come. Evaluate her. I'll pay for it out of my pocket if the insurance doesn't approve it. So the lady that was taking the appointments and saw how desperate and heard how desperate my mother's voice was, said, come on up. So she packs me in the car. I'm very sick. I had just been discharged from the hospital. This was in December. I begged to be home for Christmas. And she takes me up there to the hospital. They do the ultrasound, and he turns around and the cardiologist turns around and tells my mom in front of me, oh my gosh, she has 6 months to live. So, of course, my mother was hysterical, right, as any mother would be. But the only thing that went through my head was, but I've just made cheerleading for junior high. What do you mean I have 6 months to live? And what do you mean I have to have surgery and my chest is going to be cracked open? Right? So I go back to school for a little while. They say, go try to finish school. My surgery was scheduled. I go, I have my catheterization. They found another defect on the side of my heart they didn't know about. They said that was worse than the one that they knew about. But the whole time that I was going through the process of the heart catheterization and being checked in, the only thing I would tell everybody was, you got to get me out of here for cheerleading camp in July. That was the only thing I was concerned with. And they would try to tell me what I would feel like when I woke up and what my recovery would be. And I saw my parents all upset, my family, my friends, my church members. But the only thing that mattered to me was to be at cheerleading camp in July. And they would just kind of laugh and say, okay, dear, you'll be there. So I have my surgery, and here it is 26 years later. And I can honestly tell you that I remember what I felt like coming out of that anesthesia. I had a tube going down my throat. I remember grabbing for it. And it felt like the weight of the hospital was on my chest. I felt really bad. And when they moved me out of the ICU to my room, they tried to what? What do you always try to do to your patients? Out of bed, get up and walk. I refused. I was in so much pain. I said, there's no way that I will ever walk again. And as the days went by, I still refused to walk, and I was getting really sick. Because I had been laying, I started to do what? Develop double pneumonia. And I was going down really bad, and they were about to readmit me to the ICU. And then one morning, something astonishing happened. Everyone that worked on that pediatric cardiac floor came rushing into my room with pom-poms. And they started cheering. And they said, Natasha, you gotta get out of bed. You gotta make it to cheerleading camp in July. And that bell went off. I was like, you're right. Cheerleading camp in July. And I got out that day. And I walked around the whole hall. I was determined. And the next day I walked even more. And a week later, I was home. And guess what? In July, I was at cheerleading camp. And I never really thought about that. You know, it wasn't until you're an adult and someone asked me in a forum such as this, what is an engaged workforce? That I thought about that story, just that moment. And I thought about, where would I have been today if that workforce wasn't as engaged on that pediatric cardiac nurse floor to get me out of that bed, to know what was special to me, to know what would motivate me to get up, would I be standing here today? I don't know. And while I can't picture their particular faces, all I know is when I reflect back on having open heart surgery at 11 years old, I don't see that as a time where it was bad or reflect on it that something bad happened to me. I reflect back on the fact that there was a whole floor of hospital employees that saved my life. And you probably have a story like that of a patient that you've impacted that they either think about now or they'll think about in the future. And when I think about the whole floor, it wasn't just the nurses. It was housekeeping, as we called it then. It was the people that came and took the money for the TV and the telephone. Remember back in the day, they would come and collect. I remember all of those people and how they would interact with my mother as she sat there, as we were an hour and a half away from home. She's the one around the clock refused to leave. But they would sit down and talk to her. Because she wouldn't go to sleep, she wouldn't leave. They would run downstairs and get things for her. I remember her on the phone saying, oh my gosh, my deductible is so high, what am I going to do? And they said, ma'am, can you give us $20 a month? And we're seeing the relief on her face, knowing that she could pay for this. We all impact the patient experience, but we can only do that if we are in fact engaged. And we're going to talk about how engaged we are based upon the engagement survey that we took just a couple of months ago. Okay?